everyone, and welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about how to build a DIY rooftop kayak carrier. So it turns out this was a pretty quick and easy project that allowed me to custom fit the rack for my application, as well as save some money as compared to buying it off the shelf. So if that sounds like a fun thing for you, why don't we go ahead and I'll show you how I used to carry the kayak and some of the problems that I encountered that led me to want to build this rack to allow me to carry the kayak in a vertical orientation. All right, so let me show you the problem first. So as you can see here, I've got the kayak up on the roof and it's feasible, right? It will actually get up there and I can strap it down, but as you can see, it cuts off access to the rooftop box. So because the kayak is so wide, it is resting on the side of the roof box and taking up a ton of space. Basically, I can't get to the roof box. Also, if you look in the back on the passenger side, I've got a bike rack. And again, because the kayak is so wide, it cuts off access to the bike rack. So I can't use that bike rack to actually hold a bike because the kayak is basically sitting on top of it. And then lastly, on the far passenger side, I've got an awning on the outside, and it doesn't interfere too much. I can actually get the awning open in this configuration, but still, this is a little bit of an issue having the kayak in this configuration. So let's see if I can get it so we can store the kayak vertically like most rooftop carriers.
So to start, I should mention that my roof rack is something that I custom made for my van. I built it out of 12 gauge superstrut, also known as unistrut, because I specifically wanted the ability to expand the rack for future applications such as this. If you're interested in how I built the roof rack, please feel free to check out this video I'm showing here. You can get to it by clicking on the card in the upper right, or I'll leave a link for it in the description below. Now the great thing about superstrut is that you can buy additional pieces that allow you to easily connect and attach additional components onto the existing strut very easily. So for the kayak carrier, the game plan is to make 2 tall towers and 2 short towers out of superstrut. The kayak will then be sandwiched between these 2 sets of towers, one in the front and one in the rear. The kayak will rest against the tall towers, while the short towers will mostly just keep the bottom from sliding out. So the first thing to do is cut a few extra lengths of superstrut to make the vertical towers. One thing to note, when you're cutting the superstrut, be sure to make the cuts in between the existing hole locations. This will ensure that the part will cleanly interface with existing holes in other components such as brackets and bolts down the road. Now, after cutting them, I just ground down the edges to make them clean and smooth. And then really, this is the only quote-unquote heavy lifting. The rest is just purchasing some 90-degree brackets, a few spring nuts, and some properly sized bolts. I then just painted them all black using the same black enamel that I've used for the roof rack. I'll interject another side note here. So this black enamel paint is only, I guess, so-so. I've had it on my main roof rack for about a year now, and it's already started to chip off in some places. I guess I'm not surprised, as the superstrut and the associated pieces are actually galvanized, and I imagine it's pretty difficult to get paint to adhere to galvanized metal. I was talking with another van builder, and they were in the process of getting their superstrut powder coated, and that sounded like a great idea. However, for such a cheap part like this kayak carrier, powder coating seemed like a bit of overkill, so I'm just going to stick with my enamel paint and deal with the possible need to touch it up in the future. Now once everything was dried, I just assembled everything together by attaching the 90-degree brackets to the tower using the spring nuts and bolts. And since this part is so simple, it's pretty to do all of this on the ground in my garage. Now once that was complete, it was time to climb up onto the roof of the van and attach the towers to the existing roof rack crossbars. Again, I really like the superstrut because it makes this assembly so easy, right? There's no welding, no drilling, etc. It's pretty much just like Legos for grown-ups. Just attach the blocks and screw them down to the appropriate locations. Okay, so now it's time to give this a try. The first thing I do is clear a space in the back of the van. Now in this case, I need to move this bike rack, but luckily I've got a rack-attached swing-away hitch arm that makes it easy to gain access to the rear of the van without needing to unload or remove the entire rack. If you're interested in this system, feel free to check out my dedicated video here. Next, I take the kayak and stand it up vertically against the roof rack. Note that I specifically made the roof rack extend several inches past the rear of the van's roof for exactly this type of purpose. It lets the kayak basically rest against the roof rack and not the van's paint. You'll note that I've tied a long rope to the stern of the kayak, and I basically use this to help me hoist the entire kayak up onto the roof. Again, it's pivoting about the roof rack, not the van's sheet metal. Once it's on the roof, It's a simple but slightly awkward task to place the kayak in between the two sets of towers as you see here. I then just need to strap down the kayak. I use a set of ratcheting straps to secure the kayak to the rack. Again, this is where the super strut is really nice because there are so many pre-drilled holes in the strut, so you've got plenty of locations to attach the strap to. I also prevent the kayak from moving forward or backwards by tying off that same long rope that I used to hoist up the kayak onto the roof with. Removing it is pretty much just the opposite. I just unstrap the kayak, maneuver it to the rear of the roof, use the long rope on the stern to help lower it down to a vertical configuration on the ground, climb down the ladder, and then remove the kayak.
All right, so here we are with all the gear loaded up top, and look how much better it all fits with the kayak on the carrier. So if you notice now, I can actually even still have access to the rooftop box. I can still open it and get at anything I need to inside. And as well, look at here, on the mountain bike on the passenger side also fits. It just barely clears the kayak, but it does fit. And also, I don't know if you can see on the side, but there's actually still about 8 inches of space between the kayak and the awning. So I'm actually planning on using that space to build a solar shower and store it up top there. So the kayak in the vertical configuration on this kayak carrier just makes all of this possible, and it's just such a better fit. Now, as a small bonus aside, I also wanted to talk about how I store the kayak paddle, because as you know, those things are pretty large and giant. Well, the nice thing about having a roof rack made out of super strut with all of these extra tie down points is I'm free to do things like this. So if you notice, what I actually end up doing to tie the kayak paddle on is I actually just use, I've got a couple of spare Yakima bike rack holders. So again, these are the mounts and the trays that are used to hold the front wheel of a bike tire, and they just go right into the roof rack. They're great for strapping down the paddle, and I just have a couple of extra bungee cords tied on for extra security. So this ends up working great to store the kayak paddle right on top of the roof with the kayak. All right, as a slight aside, let me show you another reason why this kayak carrier is actually pretty darn cool and versatile. So we're going on a bike trip, and you can see I've got this bike rack filled up, and I've got this bike rack already filled up. So crud, how am I going to carry a third bike up here on the roof? Well, look at this. This is exactly where the kayak carrier comes in. So again, because the roof rack is made out of unistrut, I can easily go ahead and add extra bike mounting points onto it, and then I can just lean the bike up against the kayak carrier, up against those tall towers as you can see, and strap it down. So basically this kayak carrier can now double as an additional bike rack.
Alright, so let's quickly talk about how much this all costs in terms of dollars and hours of labor. So if you count all the components like the strut and the brackets and the bolts and nuts and all that kind of jazz, and you add on sales tax on top of this, I was about $61 into this project, and it only took me about 3 hours of work to actually make the kayak carrier. So this actually compares pretty nicely if you start looking at some retail versions of these kayak carriers, namely, so here's a simple set from Yakima. These are the Yakima J-hooks, so one pair, enough to carry one kayak, is it's already $150. And then if you look at the more complicated ones, these are the Yakima bow down, that's $240. So as you can see, you save quite a bit of money by building this yourself.
All right, so there you go. This is my take on a custom DIY roof rack for your kayak carrier. I've been using it for about the past 6 months, put about 1,000 miles on it, spread out over 4 or 5 trips, taking it on everything from freeway speeds to on ferry boats to bumping down some minor dirt roads, and it's held up great. I really like the fact that you can take the whole rack on or off very easily with a couple of bolts, and I like that it gives me the extra storage and organization on the top of the roof using this type of a rack system. A couple of things that I might improve or didn't quite like about the way I designed it. One minor issue that I discovered is that the L brackets that I used to mount the vertical pieces of super strut to the main strut, I ended up using L brackets which only had a single hole in them. So if you think about that, that effectively turns the vertical member, it's kind of like having a pin joint at the bottom, and it's possible for that piece to bend and to pivot about that one single pinpoint. I had that happen one time when I was cranking down the straps quite a bit, and I leaned on the post, and the post just went and kind of tilted over. Of course, all I had to do is just push it back over to correct it, but but it was just a kind of a minor annoyance. I know you can buy those L brackets which actually have 2 holes on them, so that would eliminate the pin joint and would make that a little bit more sturdy around that rotational axis. But besides that, I'm pretty darn thrilled with how it's worked, and I hope this is helpful for you in case you're interested in building your own type of roof rack system for your kayak. So with that being said, I think this is a great spot to leave it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, I also hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. Surprisingly, if you just scroll a little ways down and click on that subscribe button, it really does help me continue to make these videos, and I hope to catch you at a future video. Remember, they can come out every Monday, so hopefully we'll be able to learn something new every Monday, and I'll catch you at one of these future sessions. So until then, I think I'll sign off for now. Talk to you later. Bye.